What's up, guys? We're in my garage gym. This is my in-home gym setup. And today we are doing a push J, which is gonna focus around me training my chest, my triceps, and also my deltoids. There are three things that you need for this program. The first is dumbbells. Primarily, I'm gonna be using my adjustable, but any dumbbells will do. The second is a bench. You want a bench that can do all ranges. Mine is gonna be used both in incline and a flat today. And the third is some sort of cable apparatus. I have a functional trainer. It's part of my power. However, the third is technically optional. If you have bands, those will suffice. If you are serious about your in-home training, I would really look into some sort of cable apparatus because it can take things to the next level. There's some other things that we're gonna be using today. For example, I'm gonna be using cuffs as opposed to handles, but either one of those will work. And again, even if you just have bands, as long as you loop your hand through, that will suffice. I'm also going to be using some fancy versions of a rope. However, even if you just have a traditional rope, those will suffice. I would, if you're serious about your training again, make sure that you have a long rope. Don't settle for the short rope. You want something that's going to allow you to fully shorten your triceps at the bottom of the motion. You're also going to need a traditional straight bar for today's workout. Starting with movement number one today, it's actually going to be a prehab movement. I'm going to be doing a rotator cuff. And we're going to be doing external rotation where I pull out. The key with this exercise is one, to wedge a towel in between your elbow and your torso so that your arm feels flush against your body the entire way. And then two, you want sufficient tension that by the time you get to about here, parallel, where you're at a 90-degree angle, that should be as far as you should get. If you can get past here, you either one, aren't using enough weight, or two, you aren't using, in this case, enough tension. And even with my functional trainer, I actually prefer a band for this movement. That's my first movement of the day. It's going to be a prehab exercise. It's for my rotator cuffs so they can stay nice and healthy. For our second movement, we're going to be doing a T-spine mobility. And remember, this is a garage gym, so people walk through this. My dogs are through here. There's hair all over the place. So I'm gonna put down a mat. I'm gonna lay on my side. Here's my upper leg. Here's my bottom leg. I'm gonna place my upper leg underneath my bottom leg as such. This is going to allow me to trap my knee, so now my knee doesn't lift as I rotate. At that point, laying on my side, I then put my hands together as if I was flapping, Hulk smash. And then I'm gonna proceed to rotate. I'm gonna turn, make sure that knee, guys, stays on the ground as much as possible. If the knee lifts up, it gets very, very easy, right? It's all about keeping the knee down so that my mid-back has to rotate. This is going to allow us to be thoracically mobile, and it's really gonna help with movements like flies and etc. And just really good as we age for shoulder health. Oh yeah. I've helped thousands of people lose weight, and I've trained hundreds of people. I've been the premier trainer in Westchester, which is a county right outside of New York, for years. And what I have found is that shoulder and back pain, they are the kiss of death. If you don't do something to make sure that those things don't occur or to rectify them, they will take you out of training. You can get around a knee, you can get around an elbow, but when it comes to your shoulders and your back, it can really end your lifting career. So it's very important to me that I do prehab exercises like that rotator and that T-spine mobility on both sides of my body. You're gonna do 2 rounds of that rotator and 2 rounds of that thoracic stretch. Our first actual lifting movement of the day is going to be an upper cable fly. So I am gonna use my functional trainer now, the cables, but again, if you don't have access to them, a band will suffice. And I am gonna use my cuffs for this movement. However, if you don't have cuffs, you can use handles. I just find cuffs to be more optimal because I'm gonna be keeping my hand in a neutral position throughout the whole movement. Whereas with a cable, if you're using the handles, you're probably gonna be more in a supinated movement. And that might tend to have you scoop a little bit more than lift. And I'm not thinking about scooping here, I'm thinking about lifting my hands as I bring them together. The way that your pecs function is by coming across your body. And there are actually 2 parts to the pec, the muscle group. There's the pec major, fancy term, but that's what connects to your sternum as the bigger part of your pec. And then there's the pec minor, which is that upper pec, which attaches to the clavicular head. Everybody, if they've been lifting for years, everybody wants upper pec. So that's why we're starting there first, because upper pec is very elusive. First thing we're gonna do here is a warm-up set. Warm-up sets are incredibly important. They bring your core body temperature up, and they also get the tendons and the muscles you're gonna be using today warmed up. You wanna start with a weight that's light. A lot of people fuck up, they go straight to heavy weight. One, you're putting yourself at risk for injury, and two, you're not gonna be able to lift as heavy. You wanna get the muscle ready to be able to recruit itself. So it's really important that you do a warm-up set. I'm gonna be doing about 50 pounds on these flies, and I'm actually gonna start with 20, and then I'm gonna do a second warm-up set with about 35, and then I'm gonna move into my working weight, and I'm gonna train near to failure. For technique of this exercise, at the beginning, I want my arms behind me. I want them loaded in a stretched position, so my pec is being stretched. And then I'm going to proceed to lift my hands, not scoop them upwards. So here I am, nice and stretched. I bring my hands up across my body and back down. The goal at the bottom here is to have a stretch. At the top here, I'm trying to get my wrists in line with my shoulders. I'm not trying to bring my hands together. My hands do not matter. I want to think about bringing my elbow across my body. 3. Okay, so I then went on and did a second warm-up set. As I said, I would suggest doing 1 or 2 sets to really warm up. Depending on the weight you use, if you're stronger, you're gonna need more warm-up sets. This is my first working set, and it's very important that I go to near failure. I'm gonna do approximately 10 reps here. Yeah. Ooh, thinking about bringing it across my body, stretch at the bottom. 3, 4, 5, 11. That was probably 1 rep to failure. Again, I said I'm going for approximately 10 reps there. My goal is to always progress my lifts. I'm trying to get more lifts than I did the previous week. So my goal, getting 10, I went to 12 actually this week, and I still think I had 1 rep left in the tank. Now I'm gonna move to another upper pec movement, this time with dumbbells. Traditionally, you've probably been taught to incline press with your elbows flared out. That's great if you're trying to work the major part of your pec, the pec major. But if you want to work that clavicular head, you actually have to do the same thing with the flies and have your elbows slightly tucked in. I also find for myself personally, I don't benefit from having it at a 30-degree angle. I actually prefer something like a 10 or 15-degree angle as seen here. So what I actually had to do was I had to prop it up using these blocks. And because this is my first pressing movement, even though I used my pecs for those 2 flies, I did not use things like my delts, narrowly, and I definitely didn't use my triceps. So I'm actually gonna do another warm-up set here now. And on this exercise, we're gonna do 2 sets of incline on the press with our elbows tucked in. Watch how I do this. These are 50 pounds using my SMRTFT dumbbells. This is light, it's intended to be a warm-up again. Elbows tucked in. Okay, we pulled out the big boys for this set. Eventually, I'm either gonna do a deal with reps for the rep pep-in, or I'm just gonna bite the bullet and buy them myself. I use the SMRTFT for a lot of stuff. I think they're great dumbbells, but the rep pep-in for the heavier weight I need would be better. They go up to about 120. So I'm actually in talk with them about having them send it. I'd love to do a review for them on the product. As you know, if you've been following me, as you know, I have a lot of reps equipment in my gym. I also have Rogue, I like Rogue. Though I do prefer the customer service to reps. 14 reps, really good set. I'll do a second working set on here. I'll probably get around 13 reps. Just very happy with that. And now we're gonna move on to our third and final push movement, particularly our third and final chest movement. And more importantly, elbows are gonna be pushed out, flared out, as to where you just saw I had them really tucked in. We're gonna finish up with 3 sets on flat. My goal here is to go near to failure again. If I had heavier dumbbells, I'd probably be doing less reps than I am, more like that 8 to 10 range rather than like you saw me getting on incline 14, but I'm limited in the equipment I have. You can still get a tremendous workout. It can still be incredibly effective, despite if you're limited on equipment. It's just very, very important that you take things to failure. Also, it's very important that you take appropriate rest breaks in between sets. I'm taking about 2 to 3 minutes, but depending on the exercise, between sets. Something like my flies, it's more like 2. Something like these heavy presses, it's more like 3. Great. 12 reps. Also important to note, I did do my incline movements, not only because I care about my upper pec, but also because it allowed me to tire myself out with lighter weight. If I started with flat, I would need heavier dumbbells, but by starting with incline, I can tire out my pecs and mean that I use less weight on the flat press. Whereas if I flip the order, I could crush myself here and I might go to lighter weight on my incline, but the limiting factor is I only have dumbbells to 90. So that's why I started with my incline movements. I'm gonna do 3 sets here. That's 8 sets total for pec. And then I'm gonna start working on the medial head, my lateral raising movements, which again, we're gonna use the functional trainer. The limiting factor with pressing tends to be your triceps. So my way of getting around, giving my triceps some time to breathe, is moving through my lateral work. Now, again, if you don't have cuffs, you can use these handles. However, if you're a man who's 40 or above, I really fucking would say get these cuffs because it's gonna make a wild amount of difference on your elbows. Everybody through the course of their time lifting, if you're a serious lifter, is going to deal with some sort of elbow tendonitis. And this is a great way to take pressure off your elbows, off your forearms, even off your wrists. So I highly, highly recommend investing in these cuffs. I have this D-Moose brand. I really like them. I have no affiliation with them. I don't really have time to affiliation with small brands like this. However, I deeply, deeply appreciate them and what they do. So I'm gonna pop these on. I'm gonna use a cuff for my lateral raises. I also sometimes use cuffs for my cross the body flies, like my traditional flies. And you notice I did them earlier for my incline flies. They're great for flies. They're great for lateral raises. They're even great for some tricep work. On here again, I'm gonna do a warm up. I'm gonna set up the height of this so it's at my pocket. Here it is, it's at my pocket at the bottom. Just do a nice warm up. I don't need to do a ton of reps. Typically with pressing, I typically work in that 8 to 10 range. I had to work a little higher today because of the dumbbells. With laterals, I like to work more like 10 to 15 because the AC joint is just a very small, fragile joint, and I feel more comfortable doing higher reps on my lateral raises. But most of my movements these days, I'm going sub 10 reps as long as I have the appropriate equipment where that's possible. Couple things I'm doing for technique. As mentioned, I'm setting up at pocket. Secondly, I'm pushing against this fucking thing, so I'm braced against it, and then I'm pulling, and all I'm trying to do is get to about here. So my wrist is in line with my shoulders. I can get higher, and that's fine, but that's primarily gonna be trap. I'm really trying to work the medial head in my delt. I'll end 8 movements for the day. We're gonna end with triceps. First movement is the tricep push down. We're gonna use that straight bar that I showed you earlier. I like this because you can really load the weight. We're gonna do 2 sets of the straight bar push down, approximately 10 reps. The second exercise is overhead rope extension. I really like this because it works the lengthen portion of the movement. I like the attachment that I use because it forces you to have to stay balanced on both sides. However, any rope that's long will do. And that's it, guys. All in, 8 movements. We did our complete push day. We did some prehab, we did some pecs, we did some medial delt, and we also got our triceps in. That's it for our in-home gym push workout. If you like what you saw today, hit subscribe. Put out grocery store content, I put out training content. 40 years old, I just had a newborn son, wife, family. I have a busy real life like I'm sure all of you do. This is not my only commitment, me working out. But yet still I find a way to be 40 years old with abs and in great health. And the truth is you need to also, because you are an investment, you are an asset, your family's counting on you. Hope you enjoy what you saw today. I put out content each and every single day on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and also once a week, long format content like you just saw here today.